All right, so let's talk about session management. So the some up to this point, right, we have been encoding the state of the application in the client using URLs, which is fine, right? It's actually preferable that we're not burdening the server with having to remember things. So the issue here is that the HTTP protocol is stateless by design. What that means is that if you have a server running, there is no mechanism for the server to be able to distinguish one request from another. So if user A is talking to the server or user B is talking to the server, there's no way for the server to distinguish between the two. Also, there's no way for the server to distinguish that the request is coming from A and that a little later that request is still coming from A. There's no way for it to remember any conversation, which can be very frustrating for implementing some more interesting applications. So the mechanism was devised to support the maintaining of a conversation that the server could remember things coming from a particular browser, from a particular client. And that mechanism is based on cookies, right? So cookies is a mechanism by which the browser will send the server in the header. It will send a small piece of string, and the server will agree or not agree if it supports cookies. It will agree to store that little piece of string for the client in their own file system. I'm sorry, I got it backwards. The server will send a piece of string to the client, and the client needs to agree that it will store that piece of string in the client in the browser. Then the browser will, having agreed to storing this string, next time around the same browser that wants to communicate with the same server, it will agree to provide all those little pieces of string back to the server. And the server, having created that little string, can compare and say, "Ooh, yeah, I remember when I sent you this piece of, little piece of token. It's you again, right?" So we can use that little piece of string, so oftentimes referred to as a cookie. It can be used as a key to be able to distinguish one user from another user, right? Because the different strings are being sent to different users, to different clients, and that's how the server can distinguish the communication between different browsers from different clients. So that API of managing cookies is fairly low level. So instead of using that low level API, we're going to be using a session API. We're going to be using this library, the Express Session library. And what this does is that, on top of this low level cookie mechanism of passing strings around and storing them and sending them back and whatnot, the Express Session library does is that it creates an object that is going to be keyed off of the cookie, the underlying cookie, but you never get to see the cookie. By the time you get the request, in the request, we're going to add a new object, right? We know we have in the request object we have body, we have params, we have query. There's a whole bunch of stuff in the query coming from the client. Well, this Express session, what it's going to do is going to add an additional object in there. It's going to be called a session object. Okay, and what this is going to allow us to do is that session object coming back from the request from the client, that session object is going to be different for every different user that is participating in the different cookies, right? So whatever we put in that session object, it's going to be specific to a particular cookie, right? So if user A, sends information and maintains a shopping cart, user 1 is going to have a different shopping cart from user 2. Somebody have a question? Okay. Okay. All right. So let's install the session and let's get started using it.